Hi, I'm James Montemagno, and today I'm going to tell you all about Xamarin Forms and how you can build beautiful cross-platform native UIs for iOS, Android, and Windows, all from shared code, all in XAML. Now today, first things first, we're going to take a look at Xamarin for Visual Studio, turning any C# and .NET developer into a cross-platform native mobile developer. Then I'm going to tell you all about Xamarin Forms, that library that is going to enable you to build those shared user interfaces. And we're going to do it. We're going to build an application live. And I'm going to show you right inside of Visual Studio where to get started. And of course, you'll be able to get all the source code, and I'll show you exactly what you need. Now, first things first, Xamarin for Visual Studio is the tools that you need to turn your C# and .NET skills into mobile applications, leveraging a vast amount of shared code, but building beautiful native user interfaces, all in C#. Now, how Xamarin works is this. We need you to build a beautiful shared C# backend for all of your applications. It's your business logic, models, view models, RESTful service calls, Azure integrations, things that are the same across all the different platforms. Then we give you the tools and 100% API access to everything in Android, iOS, and of course Windows. Now let me introduce you to Xamarin Forms, bringing you a beautiful cross-platform native user interface, all from shared code. Xamarin Forms adds to the Xamarin platform with that shared UI code layer, which is really awesome when you want to get up and started building cross-platform mobile applications. So, Xamarin Forms is more than just a UI toolkit. It does bring in 40+ pages, layouts, and controls that you can access from shared code, but you also get a beautiful two-way data binding system, a navigation API, an animation API that uses the underlying animation systems of iOS, Android, and Windows, a dependency service, and a messaging center. Everything you need from an MVVM framework. Now, there are some pages such as master detail flyout navigation, tabs, and even just a blank content page that you can add all your controls into. Then what we've done is we've abstracted ways of laying down controls, things like a stack layout, grid, scroll view, and you can mix and match all these things together. And then of course there's the controls, and there's a whole lot of them. Things like list views, entries, buttons, steppers, sliders, maps. Anything that we could abstract, we put into a single cross-platform API. So it looks a little bit something like this if you were building a login screen. You'd have a stack layout with two entries, data bound to a username and a password field, which would be in your code behind, and then a button. Here we've made it green. And as you can see on each platform, you're getting the native look and feel because it's the native user interface on each platform. So you have a UI tab controller on iOS on the bottom, material design on Android, and on Windows 10, it depends on whatever platform you're running on, whether it's desktop, mobile, or even Xbox or HoloLens, anywhere you want to put it. Now let's get started right inside of Visual Studio, building our very first cross-platform native app with Xamarin Forms. Let's take a quick look at the My Weather application. This is a Xamarin Forms application that can use either a city and state that you enter or your geolocation to pull down weather and a full 5-day forecast. And while it's a Xamarin Forms application built with cross-platform user interface, we're getting the native look and feel because it's the native application with the native UI elements on iOS, Windows 10, and Android. Let's first start on iOS, and the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is a remote iOS simulator for Windows. So I'm here on a Windows Surface Book, and I have a full touchscreen. So I can come in, I can say get weather, it'll go out, pull down my weather information, I can go into a 5-day forecast, and of course in Seattle it's going to be rainy. I can do the same thing here on Windows 10, I can swipe through to the forecast, and the same thing on Android, but I'm getting beautiful material design. And we can see it's about 51 degrees right here. If I want to, I can go ahead and tap and say use geolocation, and it'll go out and use the geolocation based on where I'm currently located at. But I'm getting beautiful material design, Windows 10 look and feel, and of course, our iOS look and feel with tabs on the bottom with icons. Now let me show you where to get started if you're building your very first Xamarin Forms application. I'm here inside of Visual Studio, and when you select New Project, this is going to bring you into the New Project dialog box. And what we can see here is that I have Windows, and with Xamarin installed Android, so here's all of our Android templates, including a blank app, a single view app, binding project. Under iOS, you're going to find things such as watchOS, iPad, Universal, and even tvOS applications if you're building a TV app. To get started with Xamarin Forms, you want to head to cross-platform. You'll find blank applications using XAML views or just C# code behind. Now I have the My Weather application, so let's take a look at that. Here it is. Now this application uses the MVVM model and approach. We still have a portable class library with all of our shared code, so our models, views, and view models, and of course an Android, iOS, and Windows 10 application. So that way if we need to go in and write specific code, we can. Here, under our references, we're bringing in .NET, JSON.NET, a few plugins for Xamarin to do geolocation, and Xamarin Forms. So I have access to everything right in my shared code. Now our weather view model is our code for our code behind. So when I take a look at that, this should look a little bit familiar. We bring in Xamarin Forms, a few plugins, and of course we have some public properties such as location, use GPS, is imperial, and a few other settings such as temperature and condition. Whenever I tap on that button, it goes out and it'll either use our geolocation or the location that we've entered to go and grab our current weather data. But let's take a look at the actual view, the Xamarin Forms view. When I open the weather view.xaml, we'll see that I have a content page. I can bring in additional value converters, and then I have a stack layout. Inside of here, we've added some really cool new features, such as triggers and data templating. So here, for instance, whenever I pull up my application, and when I say use GPS, you can see that automatically the actual entry field is grayed out automatically using this data trigger that I can set to false without any code or logic, just the XAML. Here I have a stack layout where I'm stacking a label and a switch, all data bound, and of course the labels to display the temperature and condition. There's no code in my code behind, it's all in the XAML view to create those native looks and feel, because it is a native application. Now what we can do though is bring out our Xamarin Forms previewer. This is going to enable us to actually preview our application live. So here I have some data that's bound for mock information. So we can see our use GPS, use imperial. So if I wanted to play around and for instance, perhaps move, let's say the use GPS and use imperial, I could come into my options and say, well, let's change that to start and expand. And now we can see the use GPS update. The same thing here. We can see what that looks like down here. I could come into any other property, such as maybe my temperature, and make it, let's say, bigger. How about 30? How about the text color equal to purple? There we go. Now it's looking really good. So now I can go ahead and redeploy this application with all my changes, but I can modify my user interface and see the preview live on iOS and Android right from inside of Visual Studio. But let's pull in one cool additional feature. I want to bring your attention up top to my namespaces. We can see I have some converters, but I'm actually bringing all of iOS's namespaces in. This is called native embedding. It enables me to not only use my Xamarin Forms controls, but also embed my own custom controls and iOS or Android controls right in there. So let's say instead of using imperial, I want to use a segmented control. So here what I'll do is I'll use this on platform, the stack layout, and I'll say, hey, iOS, we'll set that to false. There we go. And it'll go ahead and be removed. And then what I want to do is drag a little snippet of code right underneath it. There we go. Now what we're seeing here is that I'm actually placing an iOS segmented control, data bound to the selected index for both the Fahrenheit or Celsius, giving it that beautiful native implementation. While on Android and Windows, it will still have the switch available. But now I'm able to combine those worlds of Xamarin Forms controls, which are native controls, with any control on iOS, Android, and of course Windows, all completely in my XAML with data binding. And that's Xamarin Forms, building out beautiful native UIs across all the different platforms, all in XAML and in shared code. Now, if you're looking for more, of course, head to our documentation, but I want to tell you a little bit about Xamarin University, our live interactive training and self-guided learning. Head to xamarin.com/university for your full 30-day trial. It's really going to bring you up to speed when you want to start building cross-platform mobile applications with Xamarin. And of course, for everything else, just head to xamarin.com. You can find pre-built samples and of course everything about Xamarin Forms and our open source initiatives. Thanks.